Welcome. In this video I'm going to be doing an unboxing of the Metabo HPT C10FCG 10-inch compound miter saw. If you find this video helpful and you want to purchase one of these, I'll put a link to it in the description on Amazon, and if you use that link it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. So on the side here we have some specs. Amps is 15, no load speed is 5000 RPM, blade diameter is 10 inch, arbor size is 5/8 inch. Bevel angle range left is 0 to 45 degrees. Bevel stops, adjustable 0 to 45 degrees. Miter angle range is left-right 0 to 52 degrees. Miter detent stops left and right is 0, 15, 22.5, 31.6, and 45. Height is 21.5 inches. Weight is 22 pounds. This also has a 5-year warranty. So let's get this open. So here we have some accessories. Looks like a dust collection bag. We'll get into that in a minute. There's also a hex key down here in the box. So here we have the miter saw. So when I was looking for miter saws, I was actually looking for a very basic miter saw that would have decent quality. And I think this will be a good saw that strikes a balance between the factors that I was looking at. I don't need to cut large timbers or anything. I mostly just want to cut 2x4s and trim on occasion. So here's the dust collection bag. Now if it's like every other miter saw I've used, this is not going to catch a whole lot of the dust. But it has a spring clip on it. We'll put that on the back. Has a hold down clamp. Not sure what that is. We'll look in the manual. Knob. This looks like a fence or fence extension. Let's look at the manual here. So you want to read through this on your own, but I'm only going to cover a couple parts of it. So here are the different parts of the saw. You can pause and read through that. Here are more parts. Here are some more detailed specs. And here are the parts that came with it. So it calls that U-shaped piece of holder, and that is the sub fence. We have a screw, nut, and a plate. And also at the bottom fell this warranty guide. This talks about mounting it to a bench, so it has dimensions here. You drill holes in this orientation, and then you mount it with 5/16 inch or 8mm bolts. Of course, the length of the bolt will depend on your thickness of your workbench. Then it says attach the holder. So let's look at that. Okay, so that looks like it goes on the back side. So let me turn this around. So that slides in here. I'll need a 10mm socket, so let me grab that. Okay, so that tilts backwards, so you can pull that out until it contacts your surface. So this is bottomed out and it's touching the surface. So if this is up on a raised platform, push this back and this will provide support. So I'll leave that like that. I may need to adjust that later. So now let's turn it around. So now I want to remove the bolt here and install the handle. So that's a 17mm. So now I should be able to push down on this and adjust the angle. So if I get this into 0, it should lock. Okay, and then I can tighten this down. On the back here we're going to have a locking pin. I'll press down on the saw and I'll pull out on that. So you want to push this back down and push the pin in when you're carrying it, and you can also store it in that position. So next the instructions say to install the holder. So that can go on either side. It will stick in here, and there's a thumb screw. So we can tighten that down, and then we can loosen this to adjust the rough height, and that is very tight. I'm not able to get that loose. I'm going to go use a pair of pliers on that very carefully. Okay, so I put a towel on there with some locking pliers and I broke that loose, but it's still pretty tight. So this can tighten here, this can tighten here, and then you can adjust this here. So next I will adjust this. So I need to loosen here, and that is also very tight. That actually looks to be reverse thread. Okay. So this has a sub fence that can be installed here. So let me get in closer on this. So the fence will install here, and we have this little piece of metal that will go in. This will fit into a little slot, so that will go here. Like so. Then we'll take the included screw, place it through all of the holes. We'll put the nut on the back side. Now this is a nylon locking nut. And I'll tighten that down. Okay, so I tighten that so it would just swing out of the way. So you can have it up like this, or you can swing it out of the way. So that's a little bit loose like that. but if you're cutting something tall, like some crown molding, you'll want to install that on there. Now this saw will have stops for 90 degrees. They're set from the factory, but you may need to adjust them, and the manual talks about how to do that. Same with the fence here too. So you'll want to read the manual for the correct operation, but this is the handle orientation on this. We press in on the locking pin, that will turn on the saw. We can come down, we can cut our board, and let it back up. Now this does have an electronic brake on it, so it will shut off within 5 seconds after you let off the trigger. Let me get the cord unwound. And the cord's attached on the opposite side, but it looks to be about 6 feet. So let me plug this in and let me just demonstrate that brake real quick. So it took a second to stop spinning, but if this didn't have a brake, it would just keep free spinning for a long time. And it definitely smells like a new motor in here. So the blade on here is a 3/32 inch wide blade for wood. It doesn't have much labeling on it, and it's actually laser etched on here, and you can just barely read it. I'm not completely sure how many teeth it has. Counting it out, it looks like a 24 tooth blade. I'm probably going to end up upgrading that blade at some point. Okay, so I'm going to do this quick demonstration of making a couple cuts. I have this set up on my workmate, and I clamped it to the workmate. I've only clamped it using 2 clamps. Per the instructions, I should probably have 4 at least. Now you could bolt this to a board and then clamp the board to the workmate also. So I have the piece clamped down, and now I'll make a cut. So that cut's somewhat smooth. It's not the smoothest cut, but decent for the stock blade. So here I have my square on here, and that's looking very square. It's looking square in both dimensions. And this is from the factory setup. I haven't touched this yet. It is nice when something is square from the factory, because then you spend less time getting it ready. Next, I'm going to make some cuts on this brick mold. Now, I'm not actually framing out a door with this. This is a scrap piece. So I'm going to cut it up into a couple pieces, then I'll make some miters. So I had to move my clamps to opposing corners to get to 45 degrees here because it was running into the clamp. Now these angles I cut first are looking perfect with my carpenter square. That angle is also measuring 45 degrees. So my impressions after using this, the stock blade cut's okay. I'll probably upgrade that at some point. Now this hold down here was very tight. I actually took an M6x1 tap and re-tapped this so this would screw in a little bit better. Now it might work itself loose more quickly, but time will tell if that was a good decision or not. Another thing about this is a kind of a, I don't know, football shaped throat plate here. So if I wanted to create a zero clearance insert, it's not as simple as just ripping a board down to a certain width and cutting it to size. I'd actually have to trace this out and cut it to that shape. Now I have a scroll saw and a jigsaw, so I have tools that I could do that with. But if it was a uniform width across the whole thing, it'd be easier to cut a zero insert for that. Now I didn't have a lot of splintering with this, but this is a new blade. And this wasn't wood that would splinter a lot anyway. You can take some 1/4 inch hardboard and just use carpet tape and stick it onto the surface and then use that as a zero clearance insert. Of course, if you're doing miters, then you have to have one for each time you move it. But if you're doing lots of straight cuts, for instance, and you want zero clearance, you can use some kind of spoil boards on there to back up the cut. But otherwise, I think this is going to meet my needs. This is what I was looking for. Maybe someday I'll need a fancier miter saw, but for right now, I just want something to say cut brick mold or trim or slice 2x4s up or 2x6s. If I got to a point where I was doing beams and such, maybe I'd need a larger saw. Here's the dust collection bag. Let's see if I can dump this out. So that's about how much dust it collected from the bag. So you don't want to use this inside where you need good dust collection. So that was an unboxing of the Metabo HPT C10FCG 10-inch compound miter saw. That's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.